Hello, everybody. Cultured Khun here again. Thank you very much for watching, subscribing, sending me feedback, commenting, sharing, liking, and keeping this channel popping. I listen until you get bored. So today, I want to continue on the series thus far of consciousness. We're building on what we spoke about last time, which was class consciousness. Today, I want to talk about something a bit spicier, which is color consciousness. And today, I'm going to start with a little anecdote, like I did the last time. So, I only found out I was black when I was 12. Now, don't jump to conclusions. It's like, no, I was blissfully ignorant. I didn't realize the social, political, economic, and philosophical connotations of being black. And it's only since adolescence when I started to realize that there is a whole movement such as black consciousness. And all these ideas were foreign to me because being a little boy, growing up in Zambia, majority black people, you see people as people, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously, we all have grandmothers, aunties, uncles who who share superstitions about no, white people this, Chinese people that, Chinese Indian people that. And I'm sure it's the same with white kids, Indian kids, black kids, whatever kids. But my personal experience was that I wasn't anything until I was 12. And when I was 12, sips tea, I became black. What do you mean I became black? I think I became consciously aware of being black and its implications. So I want to talk about color, skin, pigmentation, melanin. You know, for me, a lot of these things are just cosmetic, superficial. But then when you realize that wars have been fought over skin color, wars have been fought over resources, people have been gatekept, people have been pushed out and been privy to access certain opportunities and platforms because of skin. You know, so it is a deep topic. It is something that goes below surface level. But anyway, let's talk about my introduction to color, to race, to skin. So when I was 12, sips tea again, I went to the UK. I went abroad for boarding school. Now, normally people in Zambia go to boarding school in your local area or somewhere close to home. But I was quite far away from home and I went to a majority white school. And yeah, obviously certain people, oh no, but you're privileged. Like, oh, shut up, listen. So I went to school abroad and then I got introduced to the idea of racism in practice, but not necessarily the full-blown bigotry. But I think it was more, again, coming from a place of ignorance because in the part of the UK that it was a lot of white farmers, a lot of World War vets. So there's a lot of people who wouldn't have had exposure to melanated people like me or otherwise. And so for a lot of cases, I was an ambassador of knowledge and awareness for them. And I was their first meeting of a black person, the first example, the first person they could see, hear, touch, feel, and embrace in their environment. And yeah, so, you know, I showed them that, yes, not all black people are starving. Not all Africans need 33 cents a day. Some of us are well fed. Some of us are big boned. Some of us, our mothers loved us enough to spoil us. So some of us have cultured palates. Some of us are smarter than them, stronger than them, deeper thinkers than them, just more interesting than them, better socially integratable than they were. And a lot of these things came true. So being black, you know, you take a picture, you look like a blot of ink on a white piece of paper. You know, I remember looking in the yearbook pictures of some of the combined cadet forces where you look at white, then black, and white. So it almost looked like someone was missing or like I was I was a shadow. Ah. And then you laugh, otherwise you cry. And so that was a very visceral experience for me because I had to confront some of these challenges. Like going there, obviously, I had a different accent. This accent I have, this quasi posh African English, Zambian, Zamglish, whatever it is a consequence of being stuck between those two worlds and having that culture clash. Because I went there, you know, Bundu boy, well, Bundu to a certain extent. And I had a different accent. Everyone else spoke proper, spoke English. And, the English we speak in Africa, particularly in Zambia, is very different from the English spoken in the UK, in England. And even in the English peninsula itself, speaking English in the north part is very different from the south part. And English people will tell you that. Any Brit will tell you that. English in the north and the south is like separate languages. And that's just credit to showing you how English is really, it's like a fake language because it's so many different versions of it spoken, so many dialects, and you don't even know which the true one is. But anyway, I was in the north part, and the north part is stereotypical working class farmers, industrial workers, and like I mentioned before, former World War vets and stuff. So there's a rich heritage that goes there. There's a, that whole working class mentality. There's a blue collar pride. But I was in a posh school there anyway. And so mixing and matching with different kids from all over the world. Teachers were quite posh and whatever. So yeah, interacting with the teachers and the kids, obviously some people would underestimate you by virtue of being black. And I was confused by it because I've gone through most of my life coasting, surfing along my privilege, as I mentioned before. And in Zambia, I was quite privileged. I went to good schools here, initially Zambian schools, and I went to the international school. So even with that trajectory, for me, I was feeling myself. I had moving with big shoulders. I was that guy. And just going to the UK was such a shocking experience for me because it was only then when I had realized how deep this whole skin debate was. And so I'd have certain encounters where I remember having to slap my own friend. This is a brother of mine. This is someone I take a bullet for today, someone I go to war for. I don't want to mention his name because I love him so much, but he taught me a lot about blissful ignorance there of the first world, a lot of first worlders. And he had said the word nigger. So obviously you guys know the implications of that word, its history, and I don't need to delve too deep into that. But I had to slap him in the middle of the dining hall. Slapped him, yes, in front of white people. I caused harm to a white guy. And teachers came, they apprehended me, and they talked to me, and yeah. And it was a thing for me where if I felt disrespected or offended, I'd react. For me, it was never, oh, you must fear a white man, you must be scared. I'm not a coward like a lot of Africans, particularly South Africans, who would rather cause xenophobic attacks and kill someone who looks like them than strike arms at a white person who has caused more damage to them than we ever have. But that's a conversation for another day. Anyway, sips tea. Bombs dropped. Pew, pew, pew. Moving on. Assimilating with those guys, they learned as much as I did, and we learned each other. And so I want to speak about white supremacy. But before I speak about white supremacy, going back to Stony Earth, I want to talk about a recent experience which happened like 2 days ago. I just remembered again that I was black because when you're in Zambia, you kind of forget about the whole skin thing because everyone's black. No one really cares. We don't really talk about it like that. It's not an active debate like it is in other parts of Africa or even in Asia, Europe, or America. And so I was in the Airtel money booth. Well, not booth, but an Airtel money stand. It was like a plaza and there was FMB and Express and all that stuff. And so these 4 loud, proud white guys walk in, storming into the place, stand in front of me, cut the queue, making loud demands at the cashier. And she looks at me. I look at them. I put my head down. I look back. Now, granted, if you remember what I mentioned in class consciousness, I am a high-class kid. So I have a heavy surname. I've come from a well-established family. And so if it comes to name dropping, I can name drop with anyone in my country and even abroad because people know who my family is and where they stand. But being a good boy, as mom and dad told me to chill out and humble myself, I humbled myself. So I just watched them. I paid attention. I said, you know what? I have time today. Let me act with grace. So I'm paying attention. They come in marching in. This guy, one of them is in like a work suit and overall. Another guy is in flip-flops. And they're just there. Shoulders back, loud, proud, chest up. Hey, we've come to get some money. I was like, oh, okay. That's a bit aggressive, isn't it? Yeah, how much would you like? 4,000, 4,000, 2,500. So, interesting. Now here I was with my measly request of 200 kwacha, but I hadn't voiced it out yet. But it's just a matter of principle. You find the queue, you wait in queue, you wait your turn, and you get there. Queuing, I thought it was something British people did, but anyway, I guess they forgot that when they became land grabbers. But anyway, moving on. So this whole interaction was blown for me. Like I spaced out for a moment because I was like, there's no way this is happening to me. It's very interesting. So I'm there, twiddling my thumbs. I walk out eventually. It's like, you know what, I can't take this. I go down and I'm thinking to myself, I was like, wow, it was almost like I was invisible in my own country. And I wonder whether that was the inferiority starting to seep into me because generally I am a loud, proud, confrontational person. I am friendly, I am warm, I am receptive of energy, but I also put out a lot of energy and I reciprocate reliably. So if you want to mess around, you can find out. And so I was taken aback because I was thinking to myself as I went into my car, there's no way this just happened to me. Because I mean, even in the UK, in places where, predominantly white people are privy to access opportunities and get treated better in establishments and institutions, I was never treated like that. I was never treated that way, but this one really made me, I was confused. I was actually just baffled. So then I thought to myself, I was like, it reminds me of something. There is an inherent idea in certain groups amongst us that they are better than others. And I started to ponder, why is that the case? So we look through history. You look through the indignation and the entitlement shown by a lot of these imperialists. They did what they did because they believed they had a right to. They had a divine right to. They thought they were entitled to do as they pleased. And that mindset carried on in their descendants, because obviously we don't just inherit our blood and bone structures. We inherit, I don't know if you people believe in that, but from your ancestry, you inherit some of their mannerisms, some of their mechanisms of moving in the world. So if you come from a long line of athletes and you happen to be lazy, but you've got that buildup of fast twitch muscles, you have that composition of being able to become athletic, that is genetic. But also, if you want to talk epigenetic, if you want to talk beyond that, there's also the idea that some of the conceptualization, some of the reasoning and logic will also fall on you. So if you come from a family of scholars, you might be more inclined to read, and you won't know why you enjoy reading, but as passed down through generations, it's maybe survival too, and for you, it's just second nature. It's subconscious. And so I want to talk about informing the subconscious and the inner workings of the psyche, because white supremacy, whilst it's built on shallow grounds, it has been proven to be true to a certain extent. So we can't deny that white people do have a right to carry themselves the way they do, because unfortunately, a lot of white people benefit off the worst white people who were able to do the most horrific things. They committed the most heinous crimes against humanity. And I think until a group, as we've seen the Chinese, is willing to do to others what has been done to them, if not worse, then you cannot be treated with the same respect. Because the difference between mistreating a white person and a black person is there's repercussions. If I mistreat a white person anywhere in the globe, there will be repercussions either from a community, locally, or internationally. The same cannot be said for black people. And I speak to this because there was an incident I had in Folgarida in Italy when I was 16. I went on a ski trip and I was with my friends, some Nigerians. Now we all know how Nigerians are braggadocious, bold characters, and they don't shy about anything. So we go into this confectionery store and he's eating M&Ms prior to us entering. So now the lady starts accusing him of having stolen M&Ms, like less than €5, like peanut, whatever. So he throws like a €50 at the teller, and she starts shouting "negra," "negro," all kinds of Italian, whatever. But you could tell by the aggression and the tonality of her voice that she was swearing at us. So police rush in and they see two black guys. Now, obviously, there's shit English being spoken by the teller and shit Italian being spoken by us. So we're now trying to conversate. I'm trying to calm down the teller and trying to communicate with the police officer. And then my friend is getting riled up. He starts taking off his rings, all Gucci'd and Versace'd up. And so we get taken into this, it's not even a small holding, whatever you call it. Even if you've been to these resorts, they don't really have police stations like that. And we get sat down. So he's trying to speak to us in broken English. And essentially my Nigerian friend, he was rightfully upset, because he's being treated like a piece of shit when he's not. But obviously, for those of you who don't know, some Italians harbor such feelings of resentment or look down on some of us. And it doesn't rub them well when you see black excellence or whatever you could call it, black affluence maybe is a better term for it. And so, our coach comes to us and not coach. Well, okay, yeah, he was my rugby coach, but he led the trip, so he was like the head of the PE department. Because skiing is a sport, so yeah. And he was just breaking it down to us, like you're in Europe, and this is not the UK. People all across the world aren't as welcoming, they aren't as open, they aren't as receptive of you, people that look like you. Put it bluntly, there's racism. Racism is very real. And so I've had these mini encounters over my life that keep peppering into me that you are black. They keep reminding me that you're not any different. And for me, I really wish we, as the human race, could rise above labels, because I really believe labels are limiting. Anytime I've tried to live up to the label of being black, it has been for the dissension of another race. Anytime I've been called white, it has come at the cost of my blackness. And it's like, why does race have to be so restrictive? Because culture, as we know, is the activities within a community that develop with the needs there and then. So fetching water and ritually speaking about certain practices and getting involved in certain activities, it's all done with a purpose. You know what I mean? So race as well, ethnicity, surely was done with a purpose, because I know there's that alienation of people foreign to yourself, and as far as your survival needs, you stick to people who look like you, who share your common values, because you know them. You know what I mean? But the downside of that is that the world is getting smaller by the day. So you restrict yourself from accessing this globalized community if you pigeonhole yourself in your race. And because a lot of people who play this identity politics don't have the best intentions when they mention race. It's part of my issue with this whole black consciousness or white or neo-Nazi bullshit, to be quite frank. It's like, both of you people are missing the point. A lot of you guys are both poor. A lot of you guys are both miseducated. A lot of you guys are both misinformed. A lot of these sectors of society were divvied up and decided upon by the people who pull the strings from the top. So these ideologies, which are fed to you via universities, via social media, via mainstream media, via your clans, via your church, via your communities, has a divisive reason, and the divisive purpose of it is to conquer you, divide and conquer. So as black people, one thing we have to accept is, in large part, a lot of us have been conquered, because even black people as a whole, we aren't united as a race. Even white people, I'll tell you this personally, all white people don't like each other. All white people across Europe don't like each other, across America. All white people within singular nations don't like each other. All white people who are Christian don't like each other. All white people who play the same sport, or people who eat the same food, who drink the same beer, they don't all like each other. The same way all black people don't get along. You shouldn't have to get along because someone looks like you. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to posit that being a non-racialist is the best way forward. But in terms of being color conscious, color beyond the scope of pigmentation and skin is now leading into things such as resource allocation. And that's how the apartheid state in South Africa was constructed. You divided resources according to the pigmentation of your skin, something which you cannot control, something which you didn't choose, something which was God-given, provided you believe in that. It's a restrictive mindset, and I think it holds us back from ascertaining a level of awareness and consciousness to be great with each other, amongst each other. Now, granted, you should operate within the group. It is best to work as a collective. It is best to work as a team. But on top of that, the first team you need to work with is yourself, and all the voices in your head and the spirits trying to come out of your chest. Because having been fed a lot of false narratives by black and white people, having met dumb and smart white people, having met dumb and smart Asians, you realize at the end of the day, we're all just people. Now, this is not to say that the whole race argument or race for resources divided or allocated according to race isn't valid and ethnicity doesn't exist and culture doesn't exist, or the subsects of that become problematic. But for me, the whole idea of race in of itself doesn't help me move in the world the way I'd like to move in the world. So I want you guys to evaluate some of these value structures and value systems that are imposed on you and how you move with them. Are they all beneficial to your mission, to your vision for yourself, your society, and the people who you want to bring along with you? Are you aware that for some of us, some of our closest friends are of different races? Some of my biggest opposition have been people who look like me, people who sound like me, people who came from the same place I came, people who were born where I was born, people who ate what I ate, people who wear what I wear. I'll speak to this personally. With a lot of my endeavors, people who supported me the most haven't been black people. That's just a fact. With my podcast, with my YouTube channel, with all my business endeavors, everything I've ever tried to achieve, my biggest opposition has been black people. So now what do you say to me? Does that mean I'm any less black? Despite having the pigmentation, despite having done the marches, despite having read the books, despite having been indoctrinated, by certain theories and practices, am I now less black because the black community as a whole hasn't really been that supportive of me? Am I less black because I think alternative to the norm? You know what I mean? Because even if you look at African countries as a whole, if you look socially, politically, economically, the biggest barriers to entry presented to youths or alternative thinking black people like me are black people. And this just further emphasizes the whole folly of being black. It's a farce. Because how can we say, oh no, black consciousness, let's all be black, da 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 da, when not all people who are black, first of all, identify as black. Secondly, socialize black. Thirdly, practice politics in a black manner. Economically choose black business. A lot of us, this phone right now is from Korea. The clothes I'm wearing, Adidas, is from Germany. Like, the cup I'm using to sip my tea is most likely from China. What I'm wearing right now, using right now, even this tripod I'm using to record this, is black. So am I now less black because economically I haven't empowered black people who aren't presenting themselves in places where I can vote black via my wallet? And these are some of the questions I want you guys to ask yourselves. And even with white supremacy, if you want to bring it down ultimately, I think, integration and assimilation isn't the way. I think, honestly, if you really want to be treated, as they say in the UK, as an equal with white people, you have to be willing to be as good, but more importantly, as bad as they are. Because a lot of white people, they don't respect other races because there's no repercussions, there's no consequence for such disrespect, like I mentioned before. If a white person strikes a black guy in the US, racially charged crime, speaking maybe a police officer, it's just another day in the office. Here, if a black guy strikes a black guy, there is no call out from the community, there is no curse, there is no harm done by that egregious act. Why is that the case? Ask yourselves, why are people across the world able to mistreat people who look like you without thinking twice about it? Why do you, when you want to say something bad to a white person, when you want to challenge a white guy, when you want to hurt a white guy for having offended you, feel bad, feel some sense of remorse towards showing that resentment? Why are you unable to react as openly with white people than you are as black people? And also, I don't want to make this a whole white versus black conversation because I think, aside from what I've mentioned before, there's a tendency amongst us white and black people to make everything about us. We make this like a zebra-themed society when there's many colors, there's many creeds, there's many cultures. And so every other race who is who they are, how do you guys feel about your position in the world? How do you guys feel about the way black people, white people, or even mixed race people treat you? Do they treat you with a certain indignation? Do they treat you with like an aristocratic disdain? Is there a high nose approach to you, or is there a brown nose approach to you? And even a lot of my white friends will tell you now, as far as black people, I think I've probably shifted their mindset, because having a superiority complex, being a black guy who is supposed to have an inferiority complex because at home we're trained to be respectful to authority and to elders and all that garbage, it's quite baffling, because you're like, it's an enigma. And you obviously meet the Nigerians who they themselves will quite proudly put themselves out in the world and will stand on principle for what they believe and who they are and who they think they are, So these are some of my thoughts on color. And I think as this series develops, I'll be more candid about some of my experiences, because I think these are conversations that need to be heard. I know obviously here, I've seen some white people get mistreated, and I've definitely mistreated some white people in my life. I don't know if you say thankfully, but I've broken some hearts, some white hearts, male and female. Not saying I'm bi, but certain things I've done or said, of course, harm to white people, and white people have caused harm to me the same. And I think when we treat each other as equals, when we're willing to be as good or as bad for each other, we sort of look over the fact that he's white or I'm black, or more importantly, he's pink and I'm brown, or he's orange and I'm a bit yellow. It's like, it's so nonsensical. And I think we all, I hope, can rise above these societal strictures that tell you as a black person you must do this, or as a white person you must do that. Because even in our freedom struggles, funnily enough, there were white people, there were mixed race people, there were Asian people. The people all across the world have helped each other throughout the ages. It's just the worst of us oftentimes get mixed in with the best of us, and that's the whole collective responsibility ish. The whole survivor's guilt thing, which I was mentioning before in class consciousness, where because a white person is born white, they didn't choose to be white, they now have to succeed the legacy of murderers, rapists, imperialists, colonialists, when this shouldn't be the case. But in the same breath, if you're not to uphold that legacy, I shouldn't uphold conversations about debt, which I didn't incur. Debt from my ancestors, from resources I never exploited, resources I never had access to. So there's two sides to that coin. If you're not as bad for being white, then I'm also not as down for being black. Because if you're not responsible for some of the colonial imprint left by the legacy of white supremacists, then I shouldn't be imprinted by black inferiorists, if that's a word, who plundered some of their decision-making processes at the hands of white people when the table was tilted and as they were negotiating certain things. So we should have these conversations, I think, more openly. I think we should engage also in a bit more storytelling, because I think there is a lot of truth to be shared in our narratives, and particularly my narrative, I know is quite interesting. The more I talk, actually, that there's quite a bit of trauma I've got to work through. And even this whole confusion of me being black somehow makes me different or any less good than my white friends, or, white people I've loved and lived with, that I've bled and sweated with. It's quite a weird one for me. But yeah, anyway, enough said, enough done. I hope you guys like this video. I hope you guys like the way this consciousness series is going. I'm going to talk about creed consciousness in the next one. And I think the one after that would be culture consciousness. And depending on how those two are taken and how I feel about where I'm steering this ship, we will see. But other than that, have a wonderful day. Stay blessed. Kultured Khun out.